Monday, Monday, happy days. Tuesday, Wednesday, happy days. Thursday, Friday, happy days. The weekend comes, my cycle hums, ready to race to you. These days arrive.
Hello there, my name is Troy, and this is my time machine. For only 5 small payments of $29.99, you can have the chance to visit the fabulous 50's. On this tour, you'll experience all the things from classic 1950s music to the addition of Alaska and Hawaii as the 49th and 50th states. The first part of our tour begins with the first color television broadcast on June 25th, 1951. This first color program was a variety show simply called Premiere. Premiere aired from 4:35 to 5:34 p.m., but only reached 4 cities: Boston, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Washington, D.C. Although the colors were not quite true to real life, the first program was a success. Regardless of these early successes with color programming, the adoption to color television was a slow one. It wasn't until the 1970s the American public finally started purchasing more color TV than black and white ones. There were many popular TV shows in the 1950s that you may have heard of, like The Three Stooges, The Lone Ranger, and The Twilight Zone, and much, much more. But TV wasn't the only thing happening in the 1950s. Music was a big part of the 1950s, especially rock and roll. Get the chance to meet Elvis Presley, who's considered the king of rock and roll music, with his hit singles like Hound Dog and Jailhouse Rock. Or maybe say howdy to country music icon Johnny Cash, who was known for his genre-spanning songs and sound-embraced rock and roll, blues, folk, and gospel. If you wanted to dance to this music, one style popular in the 1950s is called the mambo, a hybrid of rumba and swing. Don't want to dance to music? The 1950s is a decade full of love for baseball, America's pastime. The New York Yankees were especially recognized in the 1950s.
And some permissible boasting in this year's spring training. The place is Phoenix, Arizona.
You can see the Yankees as they win their 5th consecutive World Championship, or witness as Mickey Mantle hits what is recognized as the game's first tape measure home run, a 565-foot clout off the Senators' Chuck Stops at Washington Griffith Stadium. Or witness Jackie Robinson, the first African American to play Major League Baseball, playing for the Dodgers. Unless you prefer cinema. Seven Samurai, directed by Akira Kurosawa, premiered in 1954 and is known as one of the finest action films in the 1950s decade. And you can have the chance to see it on opening day. Some Like It Hot is a 1959 American comedy film directed by Billy Wilder and stars Marilyn Monroe, an American actress, model, and singer who you could have the chance to meet up with for a few fashion tips. Speaking of fashion, my jeans with the rolled up bottoms are called dungarees in the 1950s. Most young 1950s men wore a shirt, tie, and sharply pressed slacks. However, rebellious types wore dark clothes, which they refused to iron, and tried to look rough on purpose. Young ladies wore dresses, sometimes called swing dresses, that had a hemline that stopped around the knee. They also wore full skirts, stiff petticoats, and sweaters. So don't be surprised if you see your grandma in a poodle skirt back in the 1950s. Still not convinced that you should come visit the fabulous 50s? Teenagers in the decade started to gain more independence and freedoms because of the increase in spending money. Teenagers were able to buy more things like food, clothes, and music, just like they can today. That means more souvenirs on your trip. But how much do the goods cost, you may ask? Well, due to inflation, $10 in the 1950s is equal to around $100 in today's money. There are some cool products that you can spend some of your bread on when you go to the 1950s. Classic Schwinn bicycles mimic the designs of 1950s cars, and both boys and girls had them. Mr. Potato Head was released in 1952. Lego toy bricks were first introduced in 1958, and the first Barbie doll was released in 1959. You could even get your Cat in the Hat book signed by Dr. Seuss himself. That sounds pretty fun, but not as fun as the opening day of Disneyland on July 17th, 1955. That's right. You could have the chance to be one of the first people to step foot on the happiest place on earth. But maybe you're looking for the political side of the 1950s, to really experience what it was like to be a citizen back in that decade. You could have the ability to witness the protests against segregation of our country. Be present for the message Rosa Parks gave as the civil rights movement began. If you come to the 1950s, you can be a part of the cause that shaped our society today. For further information regarding the time travel trip back to the fabulous 50s, call this number.